Okay. Well, hello, pretties, and welcome back to Pretty Moody and another episode of Pretty Moody Mondays with Dr. Grayson. We are here today and we are discussing grief. Oh my goodness, we're about to unpack what this really means because it's not just what we think. So, welcome back to the Pretty Moody platform, Dr. Grayson. It's good to have you again.
Thank you so much. I loved our last conversation. So I'm excited to be here again to share on something different and new. Not new just in terms of the topic, but new in terms of how it relates to menopause.
Yes, our last conversation was so good. I believe I texted you and told you that my daughter wanted to listen to it. We were going crabbing, and she's like, Mom, put your podcast
Yeah.
on. I never really go back and like listen, which is kind of weird.
Hmm.
Um, but like to the whole thing because I do edits and stuff like that. But
Yeah.
going back, I was like in the car, like, oh my gosh, this is so good. We was dropping gems. You was bringing just all the love to the platform and all the knowledge. Thank you for that. It's a pleasure to have you back again. And like we said, we're going to keep this going. So let's jump into this grief thing because I know when we hear grief, we think number one, loss, but
Right.
you usually think of a death.
Right. Right. So yeah, great point. I'm glad we're kicking it off with that because, like you said, when most people hear grief, they're like, "Oh, who passed? I'm so sorry to hear that." But grief, the grief response. Let's go there. The grief response, right, gets triggered anytime there's a significant loss, whether it's an actual loss due to death, loss of a job, loss of a home, not necessarily that you lost your home due to unforeseen circumstances, but even if you move to a new home, and you because you have memories in the old home, so it could be any type of significant loss of something that was near and dear to you or that you really cherished it and wanted to continue, but the relationship with the person, place, or thing has been severed. So I just wanted to get into that really quick to just kind of lay the
Phew.
groundwork.
Woo, 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 woo. That is a lot right there. Like, I never really looked at it that way. I mean, I look at, of course, being in menopause,
Mhm.
um, the loss that we experience of our, which some people say, oh, we're losing our womanhood, which we totally are
Yeah,
not,
right,
like it's transitioning and it's changing. Um, but it's substantial because we go through that and we feel like a huge part of us is gone.
right.
And then that brings on all those different emotions and I never thought about even a move or, having um to like hit the reset button
Hmm.
because you're relocating or whatever the case is. The memories, just that alone, I would have
Yes.
never imagined.
Yeah.
And
So,
and it having an impact.
oh yeah, yeah. It comes up like, and it's automatic. So it's not even anything you could control because once the loss is experienced, then all the symptoms come, right? And we think of, okay, there, like, of course, everybody's into the Kubler-Ross like steps of grief or this series of grief, which is well and good because it gives a framework, but everybody grieves differently. So
That's
even if
right.
we look for a framework and look for, okay, how does this work? What am I supposed to do with myself now? And this experience, it's going to be different. So you might cycle through two of the five steps or three of the five steps. And the important thing about, grief is that, and I tell my clients this all the time, whatever the experience is or whatever the emotions are, give them room to breathe and
Ooh,
express themselves. So if you're, you know, leaning into feeling depressed, right? We talked about the difference between feeling depressed and actually being diagnosed with a clinical depression. There's a huge difference. We all feel
yes.
depressed sometimes, we all get
Yes.
sad. And so someday you may feel depressed, another day you may feel okay, like, I got this, everything is fine, no problem. Another day you may feel angry about the loss of whatever the thing, person, place is. Another day you may be bargaining with God. God, please, if you just, do this thing.
Yes.
So we find ourselves
Yes.
backpedaling, right? We want
That's right. That's right.
we want to bargain with God and backpedal and try to get the thing back or reclaim it because we don't know how to deal with our emotions. We don't know how to deal with our feelings. And that's a societal issue. We're taught to, not lean into those things, but they're there to give us messages. And I think I touched on this the last conversation. Those are lessons for our journey. The life lessons that we learn by leaning into the emotion, leaning into the feeling, are life lessons that become part of our testimony and part of our story. And so I encourage people,
So
even
good.
even with grief, like if I told you my grief story, we both be crying right now.
Oh my goodness.
But leaning into that because it has
Yes.
so much information and so much depth, and it builds character, and it helps us to really recognize that we're stronger than we think we are. Like at the time, you may think, "Oh, I just can't go on," or "This is too much," and "Why is this happening to me?" And so all of those things come up. But if
Yes.
we really kind of lean into the grieving process, then we will go through it, and it will happen for us and not to us.
Oh, that is so, 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 so good. So full and so good because I know it myself, just speaking about myself, and I
Hmm.
know everybody out there can relate too. We don't like to feel
No.
the things that don't feel good.
Right.
We don't want to feel that. It's like we want to suppress it, or I'm gonna just keep going, or I'm gonna just keep pushing through, keep doing what I got to do so I don't have to feel.
Right.
Because when we feel, now we got to deal with it.
Exactly.
So a lot of us like to just, especially like when you have a loss, you're trying to fill that void and replace it with something else.
Hmm.
But what happens when we do that? I mean, you made a lot of great points. Like it's healing in that, when we
Hmm.
allow ourselves to actually understand the process that we're going through in that grieving stage. Like what is the benefit of us leaning into and allowing us to feel that whatever it is, pain or however we want to categorize it?
Hmm. First and foremost, it builds our muscles, in terms of being able to handle emotions and being able to handle things that happen to us in life. The more we lean into it, we strengthen those areas of being able to deal with making difficult decisions, difficult emotions, having difficult conversations, right? So the more we shy away from things that are painful, hurtful, difficult, the less we are equipped to deal with difficult people, make difficult decisions, um, being able to really get out of our comfort zone. Because the more
Yes.
we kind of avoid, tiptoe around, and oh, let me get away from that, we stay right where we are. And then we get into regrets of, I wish I would have, or,
Hmm.
someday I might be able to. But if we lean into it and lean into the lesson of it, right? I'm not saying just to kind of wallow in it and give up and just,
Right.
let
Right.
grief overtake you. That's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about acceptance,
Ooh.
and being able to deal with, okay, this thing happened. It might have happened to you initially. Like that's the impact of it, right?
Oh
But
yeah, we all
how,
this is
right, this
why
happened
you
to
do this to
me.
me.
Right. But then, if we lean in and kind of reframe it, we can think about, okay, why did this happen to me? Right. What is this for? And, I say this all the time, and I'll be like, what meaning are you making of the story that you're telling yourself? Because that's what it's really about. What meaning are you making of the story? If your story in your head about that thing is negative, and that's the meaning that you're making of it, then everything associated with that is going to be bad, negative, trying to get
That's
away from it, can't stand it, want to block it out.
That's so true. I mean, because it's our perception and how
Hmm.
we are, like you said, receiving it, and then how we are like really looking at it, like as
Yeah.
a whole.
Yeah.
And again, I can just speak for myself, but Listen, we can get them stories in our head because we done honed in
Oh
on it.
yeah.
And sometimes it's hard. You gotta like really shut yourself down to like move from that space.
Mm-hmm.
Like, yes, because well, if you say something to yourself enough times, you're gonna start believing it.
Right.
So yeah, we gotta be careful with making sure that we get that lesson.
Oh yeah.
Like, because it's always something in it for us to take, like you said,
Mm-hmm.
what is in this for me?
Right.
Moving past that, why me? And okay, why me? What am I supposed to do next?
Right.
Right?
Right.
Shifting that vision to, I guess, moving into the more positive side of the loss. Um, how can, like, I know sometimes I get stuck on things because
Mm-hmm.
it's easier to stay there. It's not,
Right. Yeah.
it's just easier to stay there.
Right.
And it's work and moving out of it. And sometimes you like, I just don't want to, I don't feel it. I don't want to do that work. It's just so
Mm-hmm.
much easier for me to stay in that. How can we get out of that like unstuck, feeling?
Mm-hmm. Good question. Thank you for that. Um, Major tip is give yourself a time limit to wallow, right? So if you have 10-15 minutes before you have to do whatever the thing is that you're resisting and refusing to do, give yourself 10-15 minutes to have your pity party and woe is me and all the things. Set a timer, get it all out, pull yourself together, and then go
And
do
get
the thing.
moving.
And then go do the thing.
That is great because the thing still got to get done. So,
Right,
but I love
right.
that because it's essentially like you're still allowing yourself to feel and
Yeah.
go through whatever it is that you need to go through to get to that other side. That's really good, Doc. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Now, with menopause,
Mm-hmm.
I feel there's so much that we feel we lose in
Yeah.
menopause, like so much. I was just today bugging out because I'm a hairstylist. I have a hair care product line. I'm into hair care, like all the things, growing healthy hair.
Mm-hmm.
And my hair is just changing in
Oh yeah.
menopause.
Mm-hmm.
And I know I know that it's one of the symptoms. I do know that, but I felt like I was doing everything to deal with it and combat,
Mm-hmm.
the hair issues. And this, I'm losing.
Yeah.
I
Like
am getting my butt kicked in this boxing ring, but I'm not giving up. But it's
right.
frustrating. Like that's today, I just was like, I've never had to worry or deal with this. And
Mm-hmm.
it's, when you're used to having that control
Right.
and you feel like you're losing it, it's like, okay, all right, like I had enough of this. What do I do? That's one of the things, the hair thing.
Oh yeah.
The we lose our sense of having control. We
Mm-hmm.
talked about brain fog on the last episode, when you feel like you're always the one that has it together
Right.
and it's out of your control now. You don't have it together. You feel like you're losing your mind, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, our sexual desire changes. That's
Yeah.
another thing.
Right.
Our skin, like all of it. So with so much um loss that we come up against in menopause, um, goodness gracious, the list can go on and on. How do you feel that we should handle those things that's coming up? And that's a fully packed question. So I know it's but I'm like, Dr. Grace, just give me all the answers right now. Tell me what I'm supposed to do to deal with all this loss that's happening in menopause because it's a lot.
It is a lot. And it may have a trickle effect, like you might have one thing happen and another, then another. But sometimes it's the whole tsunami of things that happen at one time. Um, but yeah, so in terms of grief and loss with menopause, like you said, you hit it right on the head. Like everything that changes about our makeup and how we see ourselves changes. Hair, skin, nails, bones, all of that changes. We talked about, the brain fog, the weight gain, weight loss. So hot flashes, the night sweats. It's like it goes on and on and on. There's so many symptoms.
Yes.
And yeah, and so that impacts our motivation and our energy to want
Yes.
to do some of the things that we used to enjoy. And so
That's
if you
right.
don't have the energy or the motivation to do those things, that's also a sense of loss and grief, because now, you know, if your girlfriends are still like, yeah, girl, we're going to go on vacation. You need to come along. You're like, yeah,
Mhm.
I don't know. I don't know if I can keep up with all that right now. Um, and then it becomes this thing of watching everybody else live life while you're stuck in this kind of, the bubble thing of, not wanting to be out there, not wanting to be bothered. We talked about being moody. Right?
Yes,
That's
yes.
one of the symptoms.
Yes.
And so in terms of grief, looking at each of the things that, we're experiencing as women in our menopause journey, how can we embrace those things? And it's, again, it goes to acceptance. Okay.
Yes.
I don't have to like it necessarily, but it's outside of my control. And so instead of fighting back and forth with it, how can I embrace this new part of me, or the new character of me and how it's showing up? Case in point, since we talked about hair, honey, let me tell you, I was a honey blonde queen for years,
I saw. I
years,
saw.
years, girl. And then I think the last time I had my hair colored, it didn't take, because the gray is like stronghold on this hair.
It's
We
like
are
I'm
not
here. I'm
right.
here now.
So I was like, you know what? Whatever. And so, like, when my girlfriends see me now, they haven't seen me in a while, they're like, what you doing with all this gray hair? I'm like, listen, it's my
Living
wisdom.
my life.
Listen,
Yes.
and I had to reframe it because that was significant for me. And I was like upset at first. I was like, you know what?
Yeah.
Now it's my wisdom crown. I'm embracing
Yes.
her.
That's
And
right.
this is what she's doing today. And it's gonna be all right.
Yes.
And so
Lit
kind of reframing, you're right. How can we make this into something positive, and lean into it and embrace it for what it is?
That's right, because so much is out of our control from the
Mm-hmm.
aspect of it's going to happen anyway.
Right.
So we have to, I know I'm always trying to figure out, okay, what can I do to live my best menopause life? Right?
Yeah.
Like what, because
Yeah.
it's different now. I can't really come with the same approach that I used to with things before menopause. Talk about capacity. My
Mm-hmm.
capacity is not the same. I have to be honest with myself, and
Yeah.
what I can handle and where I'm at when I wake up in the morning. Today with the hair, I was simply like, I was this close to a meltdown, and then I went to, I
Yeah.
will cut this, I will cut it off. I do not, I will cut this hair and keep it moving. Like I do
Okay.
not have time. I was like, no, like my husband went to hit some balls golfing. He come
Mm-hmm.
home. I said, he about to come home and I'm about to be short. My hair about to be off because I'm not letting this control me. But
Yeah.
if we're not careful, the things that we endure on our menopause journey, with the grief and the loss, because it really is. That was like me grieving what I was going through with my
Yeah.
hair, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, oh my God, I have to feel it. I gotta go through it and
Mm-hmm.
then get to, okay, well, what you going to do now? Because these are your options,
Right.
you know. And some things are easier to approach that way, and
Mm-hmm.
some things are not. Some things take a little bit longer, to move on from. It's just one of those things that happen to us in menopause.
Mm-hmm.
Like what have you seen that has been a substantial part of grief and loss, like in menopause, as it like when you're talking to your clients and
Mm-hmm.
anything you may have experienced?
Yeah. One of the things my clients bring up the most is the menopause belly. It's like, I always, I had a slim waist and a nice, nice figure, but since menopause, I have this belly, I just can't get rid of it. So that's probably like the number one thing. And then they're
Wow.
upset. Because now it's like the wardrobe has to change and you may not feel as sexy as you did before because now you have, the minnow belly.
Yep.
So yeah, so dealing with the grief and loss of the change in body shape and body
Mhm.
image, and then what message, like I said, what message are you telling yourself about that? What meaning are you making of that? And so the work that I've been doing around that is okay, again, how can we honor what our body has gone through? How
That's
can
good.
how can we
That's really
honor
good.
what she's gone through, thank her for all of that and don't necessarily have to lean all in at one time to love the belly because I know sometimes that's a shock and it takes some time. Um, but working against it and getting yourself all worked up and stressed out is only going to make it worse because we know stress definitely impacts especially women in the midsection area anyway. So if you're
That's right.
stressing about it, it's only going to get bigger,
And
it's
make
going
it
to get
work. That's
worse,
right.
and then it's really going to get out of hand. And
Yeah.
so one of the things that I have women do is write a love letter to your belly, write a love
Oh,
letter to
that's
her.
beautiful.
So
That is
yeah.
beautiful. I love that.
Yeah, and so
Nice.
after they get through the tears of it, and I don't want to, and I'm like, I know you don't want to, I understand, but believe me, you'll feel so much better after you do it. And lo and
Love
behold, every
that.
single time they're like, oh,
Wow.
it was such a release and a
And
relief
oh,
to do it. So
and those are the
yeah.
things like because holding on to certain like when we're dealing with certain things, like we're just like we're just
Mm-hmm.
holding on to it.
Yeah.
And we have to be able to let that thing go
Right.
at some point so that we can be released from that stronghold
Right.
because in essence it has us in bondage.
Exactly.
That's why I was ready to get
Exactly.
those scissors today because I was like, I don't have time for this. We're not doing this. I will cut you off and you will be going out of here.
Listen, I don't know if Mr. Flag would have liked that, but I'm just saying.
He wouldn't have. I'd have just said pretty moody and he would have just walked away. But it is it's a lot. It's a lot to go through in menopause. It's a lot to
Mhm.
accept, for us woman that is dealing with all the things that come with it. Um
Yeah.
I know for me, I got thrown into menopause by way of surgery. I had
Mhm.
ovarectomy. I had
Mhm.
one ovary that was my only ovary left, and it was bad, and I had to get it out.
Mm.
Um, but that was a complete process that I didn't go through it in the beginning.
Mhm.
Like I didn't allow myself to grieve that,
Okay.
and it showed up later.
Yeah.
And I was like, "What? I'm there. I dealt with this already." No, you didn't. No, you
No.
did not.
No.
And I truly realized it was actually like 2 years later. And I was
Mm.
like, why is this coming up now?
Mhm.
But I realized that I had never given myself the space or the grace,
Mhm.
to deal with what actually happened.
Yeah.
So that was it was a lot. It was a lot. It was a
Yeah.
lot to go through. But once I really, came to terms with it and I was honest about it and honest with myself, saying, hey, you know what, you gotta allow yourself to deal with this and
Mhm.
just and face it and meet it head on where it is so you can get past it.
Right.
Um, but yeah, it was a lot at first.
And I'm glad you brought that up because then that brings up the topic of unresolved grief. Unresolved grief, just because you don't give yourself the room and the space to experience and feel a thing doesn't mean it's going to go away. Again, we talked about this in the last episode. We hold grief, trauma, all those things in our bodies. So it's somewhere lingering and it will come out. if we don't make room for it. That's why I always stress, give yourself time to move through it at whatever pace you need to, and at whatever, timing that the emotions show up, let them out. Give them the room to be expressed, because if you don't, then, like you said, out of nowhere, you're like, wait a minute, why am I feeling weepy or crying all the time? Like, why am I just feeling overcome with sadness? And, what is this about? And because it was 2 years ago, you may not even initially have linked it to that.
I did not.
Um,
I did
yeah.
not at all, because I was like, in my mind, I had dealt with it.
Hmm.
I was like, it happened, it had to happen, and it's over, and that's it. Now move on. You got stuff to do.
Right. And see right there, Cheryl, right there. You dealt with the actual, physical part of it, right? The surgery, but not the emotional part of it. Like, how did it make you
Yes.
feel to have to experience that? How did you feel about, you know, having that procedure, and having the impact that it had? And that's where, you know, the journaling or talking to your therapist, about what's going on, because then those types of questions come up. Okay. How are you experiencing that? What provisions have you made to make room for that to have its own voice?
Right.
Right. So yeah.
Yeah, I did none of the things, and that's why it knocked me out.
Yeah.
It was like, "Oh, hey, girl, remember me?" You
Yeah.
just slid
Yeah.
right on past me. Well, here I am.
Yeah.
So, yeah, um, I love the fact that conversations are happening now
Hmm.
about menopause. We need to have a whole lot more, because I feel that when we embark on something like surgical menopause, or even just entering
Yeah.
into menopause naturally, not feeling like you can even talk about like these things, like it,
Hmm.
it just adds to it. It adds to
Right.
the grief. It adds to the loss. Um, and it just, when you can get it out, it helps that healing process
Right.
and your progress. And yeah, this is all normal, natural things that we're going to
Right.
have to deal with.
Right.
Like, we're not going to, and I said this before, it's not going to say, hey, I like you, girl. I'm not going to tap you. I'm gonna skip over you. No, it's coming. So
Right.
being able to recognize where we are, how we're feeling, um, being able to give ourselves those safe spaces that we need, to accept the life change that's happening, we can learn how to navigate the journey
Right.
and figure out what our needs are on this journey. Because again, we're not the same. I'm not the
Yeah.
same. She's gone. The woman, yes, I grieve her sometimes, not so much
Yeah.
anymore than I used to. But
Right.
yeah, I'm like, girl, bye. See you later. We're not doing that no more. We're not doing that no
Yeah.
more. But we have to understand that it is a loss, and it's
Hmm.
okay.
Right.
It's okay.
And we're constantly evolving and changing anyway. So even if you look back, before menopause, you were always changing. You were always evolving. Like, when you were a teenager, you were different. Like, there were things that you thought about that were immature, because you hadn't had the life experience or the context to recognize how to approach or deal with something. In your 20s, you had a little bit more experience. In your 30s, you had more experience. So the more life experience you get, the more mature in your thinking you become, hopefully, right? We can't say that for
Yes,
everybody.
yes,
I'm just saying.
yes, yes. That whole part right there.
But the idea is
That's right.
you mature in your thinking and your life experience. And so with you know, each level that you reach, and each, phase that you go through, where you're reinventing yourself, because that's also
Mhm.
part of the process. And so when we're
Yes, it
talking
is.
about grief, how can you reinvent yourself in this season? Like, what is it that you always wanted to do that you haven't done? And maybe now is a better time. So how can we lean into and embrace that?
Yes, that comes up a lot. And I know, I have really embraced being in a different space and wanting different things now.
Mm,
Whereas before I was kind of like, well, I don't know if it's going to be received well because, I don't like doing this thing anymore. I want to do something different. Or,
yeah.
you know, a, a lot of times we're faced with, we know we need to shift or move or
Mm-hmm.
change something, but we're kind of stuck because our surroundings are keeping us,
Yeah.
in that space.
Yep.
And we have to learn to get to a place where it's okay for us to want to, evolve from a space or move, pivot, whatever.
Right.
And to want things to be different. Things are it our yearnings are different now. The
Mm-hmm.
things that I wanted 10 years ago or even 5 years ago, shoot, a year ago. Some of those things I'm just like, no, I'm okay on that. I'm good.
Right.
And get into that place where I'm okay with saying that. Like,
Mm-hmm.
no, I'm okay. Like, no, I don't want to do that. I want to do this and doing
Yeah.
those things that I want to do,
Right.
because so often those things get pushed aside.
Right.
And it's important. I think it's balance too in menopause where we're losing so much, but we're also gaining a lot. And if we
Mm-hmm.
recognize and give some attention to the
Oh
other
yeah.
side
Yeah,
of the
that's
things
good.
that we're gaining, then we can put our focus, just shift the focus a little bit
Right.
and nail into that. So
That's
that's what I've
good.
been
Yeah.
trying to do, like focus on those things that, make me feel good, that bring me joy,
Mm-hmm.
and the things that I want to do, and being okay with saying, yeah, I do. I did like doing that, but I don't
Yeah.
like doing that anymore.
Right.
This is what I'm doing now.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah. One of the other things that happens is your palate changes, right? Your taste buds change. And so when you're talking about, I liked this before, but I don't like it anymore. You might find things that you used to love that now I'm just like, meh.
yeah,
It's like,
exactly. Exactly. Like, that's not for me. Well, you just had, not today.
yeah,
That
so
was yesterday. I'm done with
right,
that.
right. And that's okay. And I think, again, that goes to getting out of the comfort zone, getting out of the box, especially when it involves interactions with other people because they know you in a certain way or for a certain thing. And
That's
when
right.
you are not doing the thing that they have in their mind of who and how they categorize you, then it's like, wait a minute, you getting brand new. What's going on? It's like, well, okay, I'm allowed to change. I'm
Like,
allowed
yes, I
to.
am. Yes, I
Right,
am
right.
getting brand
I'm
new.
right. I'm allowed to change. I'm allowed to evolve. I'm allowed to have a different opinion or a different idea. It's like, it's like in a family dynamic, right? You may be a younger cousin and like your older cousins see you now and they're like, yeah, I remember when you was little, you used to do XYZ, and they still have that little girl image
It,
of who you are, and
that's
now you've
right. You're like,
grown
that
with your
is
own
not,
family. It's
yeah, that's
like,
not me.
stop it. Like,
Yes,
stop it. Like, I haven't seen you in 30 years and you still think I'm little Angie. Like, get out of
that's
here.
right. That's right. That's so true. That's so true. And I wanted to touch on when you was talking about um the biggest thing that the women talk about is the belly fat, and now you gotta buy new clothes and you gotta change, from what you're
Yeah.
used to. Like, I was just talking to my sister the other day, and we were talking about cleaning out closet. She's like, I'm cleaning out my closet. And I was like, girl, I do not want anything in my closet right now. Like, nothing. Like, I go in there, I'm like, nope. Like, I just don't, the things that I used to love, like,
Mhm.
I don't love them anymore. Like,
Yeah.
it's, my style has changed, my
Yeah.
comfort level has changed.
Right.
I'm
Listen.
like, I'm gonna put them heels on for the picture, but that's
Yeah. I was about to say
it.
the same thing. I was like, listen, I love me a good heel back in the day. Okay. Because right now,
Yes. You're like, no, like, but being okay with that,
hmm,
that's the
yeah.
thing, because you feel like, am I doing too much? Like,
Right.
I don't like this, I don't like that, I don't like, because then you start, am I just complaining? Or no, we're evolving, we're
No.
going
Yeah.
through, they call it the change.
Right.
it is the
The
change. We are
change.
going through the change, and a
For real.
lot of stuff is changing. Like it is changing, and that's okay.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's another thing is like we have been taught to fear change, right? Everything about what we learn about society, ourselves,
That's right.
strangers, our neighborhood, like we're taught to fear change and
That's
taught
right.
to fear difference instead of being curious, because that's where we grow, that's where we learn, that's where we evolve. If we are, being more curious about, how does that work? What are the different ways I can manipulate that to my advantage? Or,
Yes.
because then that's how we also learn, oh, I don't even like that anymore. I'm not going to do that. But being curious about it versus being afraid of it gives us more range and more opportunity to explore and decide. And
Yes, and try
yeah,
new things. It's like I
yeah,
want, yeah, now I just be looking for the new. Like, what's new? I don't want that no more. I had that already. What's the next? What's new? And I feel more confident and
yeah.
and wanting to let go of the older things and
Hmm.
move on to, okay, this new her, she like different stuff now, and that's
Yeah,
okay.
and
I'm
it's
good with it.
okay.
Yes. Yes. So what are some of the things that women can do to help them navigate and deal with the grief and the loss that is coming in our midlife?
Hmm. You mentioned it earlier, and that's being real with ourselves.
Mm,
So that's the first thing. Be real with yourself, right? Because the more you try to avoid it, hide it, say, "Oh, that's not happening to me," the only thing you're really doing is prolonging the process. And
mm,
so,
that's
um,
good.
yeah, I recommend, like, like Oprah said back in the day, remember when she broke out with journaling and everybody was like, "Oh, let me run to the store
Yes.
and get a journal."
Yeah.
And then you you have a journal for everything, right? You have, you, your regular journal that you write everything in, you have your gratitude journal. And so my recommendation is to have a journal specifically for grief or for menopause in
Oh,
general.
nice.
And so
Nice.
anytime something comes up, like one of the menopause symptoms or, a grief experience related to menopause, that goes in your menopause journal or your grief journal. Um, so I know therapy is also like the thing now. Used to be taboo, nobody wanted to talk about it. um,
And
but
now it's like
if you're not
who's
in therapy, then
next?
something's wrong with you,
That's
right?
right. Who is next?
And so, talk about it with your therapist. If you're not in therapy, or you don't subscribe to the notion of going to therapy, then writing it down gives it another place to live. Because like I said, we store those things in our body, but if you write it down, it's it's it lessens the impact because now it's out here and it's not
Out.
something that we're
Yes.
harboring and keeping secret. Because
Yes.
that's what actually those things are, the things that we keep secret that we're unwilling to deal with. um, and so having somewhere for us to write that out. And I tell my clients, the ones who do journal, bring your journal to session. We can talk about anything in there that you would like,
I
because
like
it's
that.
it's in confidence, right?
Yes.
Because some people are like, oh, I can't journal because somebody in my house might read it or somebody's gonna find it, and it's not the other thing. I'm like, okay, if that's the case, because I know I'm not downplaying it, because some people don't have the privacy to,
That's
to
right.
to keep those things. But even if you just write a couple of bullet points so that you can remember to share it with your therapist or share it with your girlfriends, or just so that you get it out and it's not like still lingering and being stuck somewhere in your body.
And then start festering. I love that.
Yeah.
And thank you for bringing up the journaling because the Pretty Moody Menopause Journal will be out in October next month
Ooh,
for World International Menopause Month. So we do have
yes.
that coming out soon.
Nice.
I'm excited about it too. I've been working on it for a long time. So it's good to see it. I had to take breaks and go back and
Yeah.
but I'm happy to see it come to fruition.
Okay.
So yes, yes, I'll be releasing that next month. Those are like great points. anytime I can just get something out of my head,
Hmm.
I feel so much better.
Right.
And sometimes I'm learning that it's better to write it down than to
Yeah.
say it.
Yeah.
Because sometimes it don't come out the right way when you say it. So if I can just get it on that paper, it's like, yeah, right there. Yeah.
Exactly.
I got
Right. And the
it.
thing about journaling is it doesn't have to be proper. You're not writing a term paper for school, right?
Right.
Nobody's going to really read it unless you're sharing it or you
Right.
have nosy people in your house. But so it doesn't have to be nice, neat, proper grammar, correct sentence structure, and all this kind of stuff. Like, the journal can be messy as you want it to be or as neat as you want it to be. It's up to you. But the point is to release it so that it's not living in your mind or somewhere in your body.
I love that. As always, this has been absolutely amazing. Um, I learned a lot about grief and loss because
Yeah.
number one, I was not even thinking about all the other things
Hmm.
that you mentioned. Was there anything else that you wanted to touch on as far as the grief and loss part go before we end our session today? Session.
Sure. Go win session. Yeah, just wanted to, reiterate those bullet points about giving yourself room to grieve and acknowledging that it is grief because, you've changed and it's okay that you've changed and you may feel sad about that change. Giving yourself some room to grieve the losses, whether it's, hair, weight gain, weight loss, your eyesight might have changed. It's so many different things that could have changed about you, but giving yourself opportunity and room to acknowledge it, grieve about it so that you can move into acceptance of it. And then you get to rewrite the story. Like, what meaning are you making of those changes that are happening for you? And if it's something that's hindering you from being the fabulous you that you are, then you might need to reframe that thing into something more workable so that you embrace it and that it doesn't, like Cheryl was saying, it doesn't have you in the chokehold of, being stuck in it, because we don't want to be stuck. We want to move
No,
through it.
that's
Um,
right.
and getting a journal specifically for your menopause journey. So, you are navigating it, and journaling, writing it down is a way to get it out of your head, out of your body, and giving it someplace else to live. And it may turn into your best-selling book. We don't know, right? Documenting your journey, that's your book right there.
That whole
That is
part
your
right
book.
there, that is, oh my gosh, that is so substantial because it within that, we're going to learn more
Yeah.
about ourselves,
Hmm.
right? As we're writing those things out and journaling about them, we're
Yeah.
learning who this new woman is, who she's becoming, what she's
Hmm.
doing, what she likes, what she don't like.
Right.
Like this is, yes, all the things. Put it in a journal, ladies. It can be your next bestseller. And like you
Hmm.
said, we get to write our story, rewrite our story as many times as we need to. So
Yes.
I love that. I love that. And it gives us that, it gives us that sense of having some control back, right?
Right. Right.
Because these are our feelings, our thoughts, our words, and we're writing this beautiful story the way that we want it to be. So I love that.
Yes. Thank you so much for having me again. We're talking all things menopause today, specifically about grief, because it definitely is triggered during this process of menopause.
It definitely is. Definitely is. This has been another wonderful conversation. Thank you again for being here on the Pretty Moody platform. And we cannot wait to see you again for the next episode with Dr. Grayson. Dropping
Thank you.
these
Thank
gems.
you.
Thank you, Pretty Moody audience. And we will see you next time on Pretty Moody Mondays. Have a good day.